Ladies, all right, let me talk to you for a minute. Woman to woman, heart to heart. Because cheating never starts in the bedroom. It starts in the behavior. And most women don't miss the signs because they're not smart enough. They miss them because they're hoping they're wrong. A man doesn't wake up one day and decide to throw away a good woman. He slides there. Slowly, quietly. And before he ever cheats, he tells on himself, if you know what to listen for, here are the signs. First sign, his phone becomes his new best friend. When a man starts hiding his phone and guarding his privacy excessively, it is rarely about personal space and almost never about nothing. In the beginning of a relationship, a phone is just a phone. It lies on the table, rings freely, and gets picked up without tension. Over time, when trust is real, there is no fear attached to access. But the moment a man begins to treat his phone like a locked vault, something inside him has shifted. He angles the screen away from you, keeps it face down, and reacts quickly if you reach for it, even by accident. The device becomes an extension of his nervous system, always within reach, always protected, always monitored. Privacy is healthy, but secrecy is different. Privacy says, I have my own space and identity. Secrecy says, if you see this, everything changes. When a man is guarding his phone, it is not the object he is protecting, it is the conversations, the attention, and the emotional exchange happening inside it. Messages get deleted. Notifications are turned off. Calls are answered in another room or not answered at all. He might say he just wants peace or that he does not like distractions, but the pattern tells a different story. Peace does not require hiding. Distracted men do not panic when a phone lights up. The shift often happens quietly. He changes his password without mentioning it. He stops, leaving his phone unattended. He becomes jumpy when it vibrates. If you ask who is texting, he gives short answers or jokes it away. If you ask again, his tone changes. The defensiveness appears not because of the question, but because of the fear of being exposed. A man with nothing to hide does not need to control the situation. A man with something to lose becomes hyper-aware of every detail. What many women miss is the emotional weight attached to this behavior. It is not just about another woman. It is about divided attention. The phone represents a place where he feels admired, excited, understood, or entertained in ways he is no longer cultivating at home. Instead of addressing dissatisfaction honestly, he escapes into a screen where accountability is low and validation is easy. Over time, this secrecy creates distance. Conversations at home grow shallow, while conversations on the phone grow deeper. Energy that once belonged to the relationship is being redirected elsewhere. A woman often feels the change before she can explain it. She notices the lack of presence, the way his eyes drop to the screen during moments that once mattered. She senses that she is competing with something she cannot see. When she brings it up, she is told she is overthinking, being insecure, or invading his privacy. That response alone is a signal. Respectful boundaries do not require emotional intimidation. Trust is not built by shutting questions down, but by answering them calmly and consistently. This behavior does not always mean cheating has already happened, but it often means preparation is underway. Emotional lines are being crossed. Connections are being formed in private. A man creates secrecy before he creates betrayal. He builds a separate world first, then steps into it fully later. The phone becomes the doorway, and guarding it becomes necessary to keep the two worlds from colliding. The most dangerous part is how normal it can look from the outside. He still comes home. He still says the right thing. He still plays the role. But the shift in behavior tells the truth long before actions do. When a man protects his phone more than the emotional safety of the woman beside him, it reveals where his priorities are moving. Trust does not disappear overnight. It erodes through small, repeated choices to hide, deflect, and disconnect. Second sign. His routine changes without explanation. When a man's daily routine changes without clear or consistent explanations, it often signals that something in his life has shifted internally before it ever becomes visible externally. In a committed relationship, routines form naturally. They are not about control, but about predictability and shared rhythm. You know when he usually calls, when he comes home, when he rests, and when he needs space. These patterns build trust because they allow a woman to feel emotionally secure without needing constant reassurance. When those patterns suddenly break and the reasons never fully make sense, confusion begins to replace comfort. At first, the changes seem small. He stays late at work once or twice. He cancels plans unexpectedly. He starts needing more time alone. Each individual excuse sounds reasonable, but together they form a pattern that feels unstable. The explanations are vague and often inconsistent. One day it's work pressure, the next it's helping a friend, then it's exhaustion. A man who is telling the truth usually tells the same story the same way every time. A man who is hiding something adjusts the story to fit the moment. What makes this especially difficult for women is their instinct to be understanding. Many women pride themselves on being supportive, flexible, and patient. They do not want to seem demanding or controlling, so they silence their discomfort. They tell themselves relationships require compromise, but compromise should not require confusion. When routine changes are legitimate, a man communicates them clearly. He gives context. He reassures without being asked. He makes sure his partner feels included in the shift. When routine changes are secretive, communication becomes minimal and reassurance disappears. A hidden change in routine often means a man is creating space for something new. Time does not appear out of nowhere. If he suddenly has less time for you, that time is being allocated elsewhere. It could be emotional energy, attention, or physical presence. He may not yet be cheating, but he is experimenting with a different version of his life, one where accountability is reduced. The unpredictability is not accidental, it is necessary for secrecy. Predictable routines make lies harder to maintain. As the routine continues to shift, emotional distance grows. You stop knowing where you stand. You hesitate before making plans because you are unsure of his availability. You begin adjusting your own life around his unpredictability. This imbalance slowly erodes self-worth. A woman starts to question whether she is asking for too much when all she wants is clarity. The uncertainty keeps her off balance, making it harder to confront the issue directly. When asked about the changes, he may minimize your concern. He might say you are overreacting or imagining things. He might accuse you of not trusting him. This response shifts the focus away from his behavior and onto your reaction. Instead of explaining, he deflects. Instead of reassuring, he creates doubt. Over time, this trains a woman to ignore her own observations and rely on his version of reality, even when it conflicts with what she sees and feels. In healthy relationships, routine changes are discussed, not defended. Life evolves, responsibilities shift, and challenges arise. But honesty remains constant. A man who respects his partner understands that unexplained absence creates anxiety. He does not leave her guessing. He does not make her feel like she has to earn information. When the routine changes without transparency, it reflects a lack of emotional consideration. The most telling sign is not the change itself, but the lack of effort to bring you along with it. When a man is building a new schedule that does not include emotional accountability to you, it suggests he is rehearsing a life where your presence is no longer central. The routine becomes a shield, protecting choices he is not ready to explain And distance, he is not ready to admit. Third sign, he becomes emotionally distant. When emotional connection and meaningful communication begin to fade, it rarely happens all at once. It slips away quietly, almost politely, until one day a woman realizes she feels alone even though she is still in a relationship. In the beginning, conversation flows naturally. He wants to know your thoughts, your worries, your plans. He listens, responds, and remembers. Emotional presence is not just about talking. It is about being engaged. When that engagement starts to disappear, it creates a gap that cannot be filled by physical presence alone. At first, the changes are subtle. He still answers when you speak, but his responses are shorter. He nods, but his attention drifts. He stops asking follow-up questions. The deep talks that once happened effortlessly now feel forced or rushed. You start noticing that you are the one carrying the conversation, sharing your feelings, trying to keep the emotional bond alive. Over time, this imbalance becomes exhausting, but you keep trying because you believe effort will bring him back. Emotional withdrawal often happens before physical betrayal. A man may not yet have crossed a physical line, but he has already disconnected emotionally. This disconnection allows him to justify future behavior. When emotional intimacy fades, accountability fades with it. He begins to operate more independently, less concerned with how his actions affect you. The relationship shifts from partnership to coexistence, where two people share space but not depth. When a woman senses this distance and tries to talk about it, the response she receives becomes another clue. He may say he is tired, stressed, or busy. While these things can be true, they do not erase the responsibility to nurture emotional connection. Stress does not eliminate affection. Busyness does not cancel communication. A man who values his relationship still finds ways to connect, even in difficult seasons. When emotional effort stops entirely, it reflects a shift in priorities. The most painful part of emotional distance is how it makes a woman question herself. She wonders if she is too emotional, too needy, or expecting too much. She replays conversations in her mind, looking for mistakes she might have made. This self-doubt grows because emotional withdrawal provides no clear explanation. There is no argument to resolve, no obvious problem to fix. The silence becomes the problem, and silence offers no answers. As emotional connection weakens, affection often changes as well. Touch becomes less frequent or less meaningful. Compliments fade. Laughter disappears. Moments that once felt intimate now feel routine. He may still say he cares, but his actions no longer support his words. Love without emotional presence feels hollow. It leaves a woman feeling unseen and unheard, even when she is standing right beside him. This distance also creates vulnerability in the relationship. Emotional needs do not disappear when they are ignored. They simply seek fulfillment elsewhere. When a man stops communicating emotionally with his partner, he becomes more open to emotional connections outside the relationship. He may find it easier to talk to someone new, someone who does not associate him with responsibility or expectation. That ease becomes tempting, especially when home feels emotionally empty. A woman often knows something is wrong long before she can explain it. She feels the loss of connection in her body, in her mood, in her sense of security. She misses the version of him who was present, curious, and emotionally available. What hurts most is not the fear of another woman, but the grief of losing the emotional bond that once made the relationship feel safe. Emotional connection is the foundation of loyalty. And when it fades, everything built on top of it becomes unstable. Fourth sign. He gets defensive over small questions. When a man becomes defensive, or angry when asked simple questions, it is often less about the question itself and more about what the question threatens to uncover. In healthy relationships, curiosity is normal. Asking where someone was, who they spoke to, or how their day went is part of connection, not interrogation. When a man reacts with irritation to these ordinary moments of communication, it signals internal tension. The defensiveness appears because he is protecting something, not because he is being attacked. At first, the reaction may seem mild. He sighs heavily, rolls his eyes, or gives clipped answers. Over time, the response grows sharper. A harmless question suddenly turns into an argument. He accuses you of not trusting him, of always questioning him, of trying to control him. The intensity of the reaction feels disproportionate to the situation. Instead of addressing the question calmly, he shifts the focus onto your behavior. This redirection is a common defense mechanism designed to stop further inquiry. Defensiveness often comes from fear. When a man is hiding something, even small questions can feel dangerous. They remind him of the fragile nature of his story. Every question increases the risk of inconsistency. Instead of managing that risk through honesty, he chooses aggression. Anger becomes a tool to silence curiosity. Once a woman associates questions with conflict, she begins to avoid asking them. This creates an environment where secrecy can thrive. The emotional impact on a woman is gradual but significant. She starts measuring her words carefully. She rehearses questions in her head before speaking. She wonders if it is worth the emotional cost to ask it. Over time, she becomes quieter, not because her concerns disappear, but because she learned that expressing them leads to tension. This silence is often mistaken for peace, but it is actually emotional suppression. When defensiveness becomes a pattern, it reshapes the power dynamic of the relationship. The man controls the flow of information. By controlling the emotional response, he decides which topics are safe and which are off limits. The woman adapts by shrinking her needs and lowering her expectations. Trust cannot grow in this environment because trust requires openness, not intimidation. Another layer of this behavior is projection. A man who feels guilty may accuse his partner of being suspicious, insecure, or paranoid. These labels serve two purposes. They discredit her intuition and shift responsibility away from his action. Instead of answering the question, he attacks her character. Over time, this can lead a woman to doubt her own perception of reality. She begins to wonder if she truly is overreacting, even when the pattern is clear. It is important to understand that defensiveness is not the same as setting boundaries. Healthy boundaries are communicated calmly and respectfully. They do not involve anger, insults, or emotional shutdowns. A man who simply values privacy can say so without hostility. Hostility appears when there is something at stake emotionally, something he does not want examined. This behavior also erodes emotional safety. A woman needs to feel safe asking questions without fear of backlash. When that safety is gone, intimacy suffers. Emotional closeness requires vulnerability from both sides. If one person reacts defensively to vulnerability, the connection weakens. Conversations become surface level. Important issues remain unresolved. The relationship slowly loses depth. Defensiveness is often an early warning sign, not just of potential infidelity, but of emotional disconnection. It shows a refusal to engage honestly, a preference for control over clarity. When a man responds to simple questions with anger, he is communicating that truth feels threatening and transparency feels risky. That reaction speaks louder than any reassurance he might offer. When a man becomes defensive or angry when asked simple questions, it usually has very little to do with the question, and everything to do with what the question touches inside him. In a healthy relationship, questions are part of connection. They are signs of interest, care, and emotional presence. A simple "where were you?" or "who did you talk to today?" should never feel like an attack. When it does, something underneath the surface is already unsettled. At first, the defensiveness may show up in small ways. His tone sharpens. His answers shorten. He looks annoyed instead of open. You can feel the shift immediately, even if you can't explain it. What was once a normal conversation suddenly feels tense. Instead of responding with clarity, he reacts with irritation, as if the question itself is unfair. That reaction is not about boundaries. It is about pressure. Honest people do not feel pressured by simple questions. As this pattern continues, the anger becomes more pronounced. A harmless inquiry turns into an argument. He says things like, "You are always questioning him. You do not trust him. You are looking for problems." Notice how quickly the focus moves away from the original question. Instead of answering, he flips the situation and puts you on the defensive. Now you are explaining yourself instead of receiving information. This shift protects him from accountability. Defensiveness is often rooted in fear. When a man is hiding something, every question feels like a potential exposure. Even if the question is unrelated, it triggers anxiety because it reminds him that he is not being fully honest. Anger becomes a shield. By reacting strongly, he discourages further curiosity. Over time, this trains a woman to stay quiet. She learns that asking questions leads to conflict, so she starts choosing silence to keep peace. This silence comes at a cost. A woman begins to doubt her right to clarity. She second-guesses her intuition. She wonders if she is being insecure or unreasonable. She may even apologize for asking questions that are completely normal in a committed relationship. This emotional reversal is powerful. Instead of feeling supported, she feels like a problem for wanting transparency. Another layer of defensiveness is projection. A man who feels guilty may accuse his partner of being controlling or suspicious. These accusations serve to discredit her feelings and redirect attention away from his behavior. If he can convince her that she is the issue, he no longer has to confront his own actions. Over time, this creates emotional confusion. The woman feels uneasy, but cannot point to a single event to justify her discomfort. Defensiveness also damages emotional safety. A relationship cannot thrive when one person is afraid to speak. Emotional closeness requires openness, and openness requires calm responses. When questions are met with anger, the emotional door closes. Conversations become shallow. Important topics are avoided. The relationship loses depth and warmth. It is important to understand that healthy boundaries do not come with hostility. A man who values his privacy can express that without anger. He can explain calmly and respectfully. Anger appears when the truth feels risky. When a man reacts aggressively to simple questions, he is revealing that transparency feels threatening to him. This behavior is not always proof of cheating, but it is always a sign of emotional imbalance. It shows a breakdown in communication and a shift away from mutual respect. When defensiveness becomes a pattern, it speaks louder than reassurance ever could. The way a man responds to simple questions often reveals more than the answers themselves. Fifth sign, he suddenly cares a lot about his appearance. When a man suddenly becomes overly invested in his appearance without including his partner, it often signals a shift in where his attention is going. Change by itself is not the issue. People grow, improve, and evolve. A man deciding to dress better, work out, or take more care of himself can be healthy. The concern arises when this transformation happens abruptly and feels disconnected from the relationship. When self-improvement is genuine, it is usually shared. When it is secretive, it raises questions. At first, the changes might seem positive. New clothes appear in the closet. A different cologne fills the room. He starts spending extra time in front of the mirror or the gym. You may even feel happy for him, thinking he is gaining confidence or focusing on his well-being. But over time, you notice something missing. He is not doing this for you or with you. He does not seek your opinion. He does not include you in this new version of himself. The effort feels outward-facing, not relationship-centered. This type of behavior often points to a desire for external validation. A man who suddenly prioritizes his appearance may be preparing himself to be seen in a new light by someone else. Attention feels good, especially when it is effortless. When he invests in how he looks but withdraws emotionally at home, the contrast becomes noticeable. The energy that once went into connecting with you is now going into impressing an unseen audience. The secrecy surrounding the change is just as important as the change itself. He may become protective of his time, disappearing for longer periods at the gym, or spending extra hours getting ready. If you ask about it, he may downplay it or joke it away. The lack of transparency creates emotional distance. When a man is proud of his growth, he wants to share it. When he is hiding his motivation, he keeps it vague. A woman often feels this shift deeply. She may wonder why she no longer feels like the intended recipient of his attention. Compliments directed at her decrease while effort toward himself increases. This imbalance can quietly damage self-esteem. She starts questioning whether she is still attractive to him or whether she has done something wrong. The truth is not always about her at all, but about his internal search for validation. Sudden focus on appearance can also be part of a larger identity shift. When a man is emotionally disengaging from his relationship, he may try to reinvent himself. The physical changes give him a sense of control and excitement. They make him feel new again. This can be especially tempting if he feels unfulfilled or restless. Instead of addressing those feelings honestly within the relationship, he channels them into outward changes. What makes this particularly painful is that effort is not evenly distributed. He may have more energy, more confidence, and more enthusiasm, but you receive less of it. Date nights fade. Affection becomes inconsistent. Yet he looks better than ever. This disconnect creates confusion. Growth that does not strengthen the relationship often weakens it. A healthy relationship allows both partners to evolve together. When one person changes in isolation, the bond loosens. Self-improvement should bring people closer, not push them apart. When a man invests heavily in his appearance while emotionally withdrawn, it signals that his focus is no longer aligned with the partnership. The key detail many women sense, but struggle to explain his intention. It is not the haircut, the gym, or the new clothes that matter. It is the absence of shared excitement, shared connection, and shared purpose behind the change. When a man prepares himself for a world that does not include his partner emotionally, his actions reveal where his priorities are moving. Sixth sign, he accuses you of cheating. When a woman's intuition senses something is wrong long before proof appears, it is often because she is picking up on patterns that do not match words. Intuition is not magic. And it is not insecurity. It is the brain quietly connecting emotional, behavioral, and situational signals that the conscious mind has not yet organized into facts. A woman feels the shift in energy, tone, presence, and consistency before she can logically explain it. That feeling does not come from nowhere. It comes from observation. At first, the intuition may show up as restlessness. She feels uneasy, even during normal moments. She may notice that her body reacts before her mind does. Her chest tightens when his phone lights up. Her mood changes when he leaves the room. These reactions are not chosen. They are responses to subtle changes in behavior. Humans are wired to sense emotional inconsistency, especially from someone they are deeply connected to. Many women try to silence this feeling. They tell themselves they are overthinking. They compare themselves to past experiences and blame old wounds. They do not want to be labeled jealous or insecure. So instead of listening inward, they search outward for reassurance. They accept explanations that do not fully satisfy them. This creates internal conflict because intuition does not disappear just because it is ignored. Intuition becomes stronger when actions and words no longer align. He says everything is fine, but his behavior feels distant. He reassures, but his presence feels incomplete. The mind hears comfort, but the body feels tension. This mismatch is deeply unsettling. The nervous system responds to what is real, not to what is said. A woman may not have evidence, but she has experience. She knows how he used to show up. She recognizes the difference. This inner knowing often brings guilt. A woman feels bad for doubting someone she loves. She worries about being unfair. She questions her own judgment. This self-doubt is powerful and often reinforced when her concerns are dismissed. When a man tells her she is imagining things, it pushes her further away from trusting herself. Over time, she may rely more on his interpretation of reality than her own. What makes intuition important is that it usually appears before visible damage occurs. It is an early warning system. By the time proof shows up, emotional harm has often already been done. Intuition notices the small shifts that come before betrayal, such as emotional withdrawal, changes in routine, secrecy, or defensiveness. These signs may seem insignificant individually, but together they create a pattern the subconscious mind recognizes. Ignoring intuition does not preserve peace. It delays clarity. The discomfort grows because the mind and body are not in agreement. A woman may find herself anxious without knowing why, replaying conversations, or feeling emotionally exhausted. This is the cost of dismissing inner awareness. The body continues to react even when the mind tries to rationalize. Trusting intuition does not mean making accusations or jumping to conclusions. It means honoring one's internal signals enough to seek clarity. Healthy relationships allow space for honest conversation without fear. When intuition is met with understanding and openness, it often settles. When it is met with dismissal and anger, it grows louder. A woman's intuition is shaped by connection, observation, and emotional intelligence. It is not perfect, but it is rarely random. It exists to protect emotional well-being. When something feels off, it usually is. Ignoring that feeling can lead to deeper pain, while listening to it can lead to truth, growth, or necessary change. A woman does not need proof to respect her intuition, because intuition often arrives to protect her long before proof ever could.